Hey everybody, Mark Masters. Always Bookin Comedy. It's Monday. Our guest is not here. Trying to track them down, and if they don't show up, we'll just do a solo episode. Here we go. Akudo
Hey,
here. Here
all
we go.
right.
Can you hear me,
There.
Akudo?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, terrific.
Sorry, I
Okay.
just want to get the connectivity where I am. Good to see everyone.
Yeah. How's it going? Where are you in Philly?
Yes, I'm in Philly. I
Awesome.
have a big show tomorrow at Healing Comedy Club, so I had to go to some mics today to work through new material.
Fun. That's
Yes,
exciting.
it
Tell us
is.
about
It
this.
is.
Tell us about the big Tuesday night show. What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be hosting an opening for Don McMillan. He actually was on America's Got Talent.
I know the
He,
slideshow guy, right?
yeah, the
I
slideshow
know
guy.
Don, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just ran
yeah.
into his like college roommate or something like that. I ran so many shows this month, but somebody in Vale, I think it was Vale. It all blurs together. But somebody came up to me and they said, "Hey, do you know who Don McMillan is?" And I was like, "No, I don't know him." And then they said, "Oh, he does slideshow stuff," and they like worked at Hewlett and Packard together way back in the
Oh,
day. And yeah, it was kind of cool, kind of a neat thing. I have a fun story about Don. Cool guy, very nice fella. I did a show at in Burbank and out in LA, and
yeah.
it just so happened
Was
that
that
that week,
Flappers? Was
yeah,
that
yeah,
Flappers? Okay, yeah,
that
yeah.
week, my father had sent me like a video, of comedy online, and it was Don McMillan doing like, why a stand-up comedian doesn't make any money or something like that. He thought it was funny, and he shared it with me. And then like 3 days later, I'm at Flappers, and Don's on my show. And so I said, "Hey, I'm sorry to do this, but my dad just emailed me a video of yours. Can we take a selfie? And can I send it to you?"
Oh, I
He said,
love
"Of
it.
course, of course." He was so nice about it. And so I sent it to my dad, and my dad was like very impressed that like he sent me a random video, and 3 days later, I'm in Los Angeles doing a show with the same guy.
But I love how your dad sent you the video about why comedians don't make any money. I don't know if he
Yes.
was trying to like, but now he's like, oh, my son is making money. He knows
Yeah,
people.
it was like a Venn diagram thing of,
Yep,
you know,
yep, yep,
yeah.
yep,
So
yeah. It's
anyways,
gonna be
yeah,
cool.
Don's a cool
So,
guy. So
oh,
that sounds really
cool.
nice. That sounds fun.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Um,
excited. I'm excited.
so have you done comedy in Philly your whole stretch? Did you start in Philly?
No, it's fully, you know what? A lot of so I started doing comedy about, this will be my third year of doing
Okay.
comedy. And a lot of my opportunities have been outside of Philly,
Okay.
especially in Seattle, Portland. I even went to Vancouver, Canada. I also been abroad, performed in Madrid and different parts, just different wherever I can. Philly's comedy scene is unique. We have a lot of great comics. Um, I'm finally scratching the surface. So this is my third time performing at Helium. The first time I opened up for Kristen Key. She is a musical comedian, and her agent found me online. And so I think that was really allowed me to like enter the scene. Although I do go to mics and I've done shows. I produce shows in Philly. A lot of my shows are geared towards folks who are new to the scene, who don't always have a lot of exposure. I
Okay.
mean, also done because I do improv, I do sketch, and so one of my favorite shows that we produced was in New York for the New York Comedy Festival, the Brooklyn Comedy Collective, where it was an all women of color sketch comedy collective, and these were folks who have never done, who never performed on stage, people who are new. So that I like that. I feel like there's so many creative people out there. All they need is access. And so if we can create access and opportunities, then we can have more diversity in different ways. But yeah, I'm finally scratching the surface with Philly. I don't want to just be a local comedian. I want to have a home base, but I also want to be able to perform my comedy in different spaces, whether it is in Wyoming and Omaha. Omaha is one of my favorite places to do comedy. They have a lot of good folks out there. Backline is a great theater there. So for me, if the opportunity to travel, to connect, to build community and share my comedy. I also learn. I like watching comedy shows. I like watching different performances. I learn from different comedians as a
Mhm.
way to kind of grow my style and also as a way to see like what not to do and what to do. And some audience at times, it's crazy because those open mics, you can get no reaction. But when you go to like a show, thousands of people, it's raving. So it all depends on the space, and you have to walk in there with confidence. Even if you don't get any reaction, you just gotta push through. You know, Mark. It's
Sure.
you've
Well, we
seen
met at a
different
show
spaces.
with approximately 4 people in the audience. So,
4 people in the audience,
yeah.
exactly, and Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun show. That was in
It
Lincoln,
was,
Nebraska.
yeah,
Anybody's keeping
Lincoln.
track.
It's
Fun show at the Zoo Bar. Tell me about. So
exactly.
you said you run some shows for newer comics. What kind of venue are those shows at?
So it's diversified. Some of them are theaters, and these are most like local, like homegrown theaters that are in the community that have like a good audience base or just trying to grow. And so we had a show at the Lab, which is a theater in Ambler, Pennsylvania, which is right outside Philly. We also had a show where we did it outside of a like an open space. It looks like a backyard, but it's a reclaimed space that's used for artists. And so I'm pretty much open, as long as it's like a low cost and kind of free, or low cost where we can make sure that we are contributing something to the community, and they have like a good mission, and they have a good way of engaging is really important. One thing I am trying to work on, which I'm going to put out there, we'll see what happens. I'm trying to work on a one-woman show. I think you get to the point where you put out so much for other people, whether it is sketch comedy or improv or stand-up, where you're engaging and building other people and like putting together production. I got to the point, I'm just like, you know what? I would love to like just tell my story. I would like to write a little bit more. I think it's different when you're writing for stand-up as opposed to writing for when you're storytelling or when you are doing like a sketch show. There are some components that you can add, but I think for me, I'm trying to figure out how do I be an entertainer in different ways, and how do I push the button? Because I never saw myself doing comedy. I never saw myself on stage. I think it's once I became like an adult and realized adult life is not as great as we think it is. It's just a lot of responsibilities. It's wonderful, guys. You should be an adult. You just lose that essence. You just lose that creativity. And I kind of told myself, like, I want to get back to that. I wanted to get back to that creativity. And so I took a first comedy class, a first improv class. It was scary. And I was like, well, we got to go on stage. And I kind of leaned on that. I think because I'm not the kind of person who wants to be on stage, I want to be in the background. So every time I'm on stage, I feel like I'm push myself to try something new. Yeah.
Tell me about this comedy class. What are some things you still do that you learn there?
Oh, I still write. So I like, we have like a power of 3. I like coming up with different ways to end a joke. I also think the best class that I took, I'm not going to say the names because I feel like if I don't mention some people's names, someone's going to get upset out there, was a class where we really focus on so there's different styles of writing, there's different styles of speaking your voice and speaking your truth, but if I write a joke and I say it, when someone else says my joke, they can't say it the way I can. So how do you have ownership around the jokes that you're saying where it's not generic? Sometimes we meet some comics and, no fault to themselves. When you hear the joke, you're like, oh, it's a great joke, but is it true to them? When they say it, is it something that I can be like, yo, that joke was funny because so-and-so said it and they really like honed it, they really claimed it as opposed to someone else saying it. So when I try to write things that are relatable. Like even if you're not a Black queer immigrant woman who lives in the East Coast, I want to tell stories that are relatable to anyone. And I also want to tell stories that are true to me that only I can deliver. So that's one of the things that I learned. That's important to me that I've learned in one of my comedy classes.
Okay. So keep it personal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good segue into, let's talk about this one woman show you might put on. Do you have a title for it? Do you have like a story arc? Have you begun work on it?
Yeah, I began working on it. I took some classes at UCB, story writing classes, one person show classes that were really, really great. And I do have a title. I may change it, But so here's the premise is that I'm not going to give away too much, but we are in this age where everybody loves Afrobeats. Everybody loves Afrobeats. They love African music. They love Nollywood, which is like the Nigerian Hollywood, and then people also love South African music. Like it's kind of like when dance hall and reggae and like artists like Sean Paul were like had us a chokehold to like the 90s. And so but when I was growing up, it was not cool to be African. You know, you recall names like African Booty
Where did you
Scratcher.
grow up? Did you grow up in Philly?
I know, actually, so I was born in Nigeria.
Oh,
and then I came at a young age and I was raised in Boston. So the Boston accent comes out sometimes. Like I was raised in Boston. And you assume because Boston's a beautiful city, but it can be racist. People are like, oh, were you being bullied? I was gonna put it out there. So people are like, oh, were you being bullied by the white folks? I'm like, I wasn't bullied by these South Boston kids. I was being bullied for like other Black kids because I was a different kind of Blackness. It was like there was a connection, but there was also like some misassumptions about me being African. So, like being called names like African Booty Scratcher, go back, because people didn't know that much about their culture. And there was also sometimes people create divides between Black people, whether you're Caribbean, African, or African folks who were born and raised in the US. And so it was not cool to be African. It was not cool to be Nigerian. But now it is the best thing since sliced bread. And so it was just more of me paying homage to this my experiences of what it meant for me to be an African, being born and raised in the US, and my experience now, how we're celebrating it. First it was an angry piece. Like, I'm just like, this is some bull stuff. I don't know if we can swear. Like, this is, how dare y'all put me through the ringer? Now it's cool to be African. Everybody wants to wear the dashikis and all that stuff. But I'm excited that we're being celebrated, but I'm also kind of pissed that we weren't celebrated at my age. So
yeah, where was this when I was 8 years old?
Thank you. We always knew our music was popular. So there's different like vignettes. And the way it kind of weaves in, there's music that aligns with the vignettes and like the sketches and the characters that I'm playing. And that kind of hones into that era, whether it's like the early 90s, now I'm giving out my age, early 90s or 2000s up to now. And it's an interesting, as I wrote it, I think I kind of tapped more into like personal experiences growing up and what it meant for me. It's not like, I think sometimes when we think about our relationships, especially as people who migrated here, because I'm not really first generation, like I migrated here with my family at a young age, but I can identify with a lot of experiences. And also I grew up in the inner city. I grew up with different diversities. Boston's a very diverse city. You have a lot of Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Cape Verdeans, who people think are Puerto Ricans, Haitians. Yeah, people think, I'm like, no, they're Black. They're with us, Jamaicans. Like this melting pot of culture and richness, and which was so important to my upbringing. But your culture wasn't being celebrated. Your culture was being looked down upon. But now it is. How do I make sense of it? How do I celebrate it? But also, how do I express my frustration that it wasn't there for me at that time? So that's what I'm working out. A little something.
And what's the title? Together. What's the working title?
Originally, I was called it Last Last, and the reason why I call it Last Last, so everyone knows Burna Boy. He is a big, well-known, like he's like the people's like the Fela Kuti of our time. I'm like, not really. Like he does sample a lot of Fela Kuti's music. Fela Kuti is like the James Brown during that time, like the African James Brown. Like he was that guy. He was assassinated, but he was Afrobeats, like gave birth to it, and not really gave birth, but really celebrated. He has a son named Femi Kuti, who also travels, and so honor his father's music. So Burna Boy is like this big artist, and he is really dominating, and he's bringing our music into different spaces and being celebrated across the world. I believe he got a Grammy, and so Last was one of his biggest songs that came out like 2 summers ago. And it wasn't so much for the lyrics, but it was more like we have arrived. It was like, we have finally come to this moment where now we're being not only celebrated, but we're being duplicated, replicated. We're being there's one thing when you're honoring people, another thing where you are extracting culture, which is also happening. So yeah, it's called Last Last. And funny thing is, one of the lyrics, it says, I want Igbo and Shayo, that's the hook. But people don't realize Igbo and Shayo means I want weed and alcohol. So some people don't know language, so it's in Yoruba. So my nephew, for some reason, when he was 4, he loved this song. So imagine this little 4-year-old walking around talking about, I want Igbo and Shayo. I was like, now he and I are best friends now. I'm like, I'll pass this boy the Dutch. He'll pass me the drink. Like, I feel like he's learning how to count. He's learning how to share. Like, he and I are best friends. So that was a working title. I'm going to change the title, but it's still a work in progress. So that's what I'm thinking.
In the production version, do you play music during within your story?
Yes. There is. So the production version, the music, the outro for each character is going to be a song that's going to be pertaining to that moment, that vignette moment. I can't give away one of them, but there's a popular song during the 90s by Brandy that came out, and that was like revolutionary. Like, it was such a great song. And there's a character that I play, a girl who I grew up with, who was like a bully and a friend, but her making sense of like my culture and her culture. And so at the end, she kind of sings the lyrics to that song, but it's connected to the story and that experience that she and I share together from her perspective. So there's going to be song like woven into it. That's going to be like an evolution of times. And so it's going to be interesting. That's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm trying to like muster it together and trying to see. So
let's say you get this thing together. What do you do with it? You're going to go to Scotland with it? Like what?
Why not? Yeah, I would like to first, like, have like initial production somewhere local where people can come and give me feedback, because I'm all about feedback and hearing what people have to say and then improving on it. And if we take it to like festivals, if we take it to different productions, you know what? My favorite Broadway show from a comedian was Whoopi Goldberg. Like her solo one-woman show. But she played so many different characters, but so brilliantly. And I'm just like, wow. I don't want to replicate that exactly, but I think it's just that it created that golden standard. Like, this is what quality looks like. And I want to take it as far as I can, because I think it's relatable to a lot of people. Part of it is like your adolescence, your childhood. What does it mean to make sense of the world around you? How do you embrace culture? And white people, y'all got culture too. Like, people don't believe it, but y'all got culture. Whatever that culture looks like. I celebrated St. Patty's Day last weekend. I hid. I was like, I'm hiding from you guys. I'm just going to celebrate. Pass the pint. And I told my friend, like, I drank cider beer. They're like, you are not doing well for St. Patty's Day.
That's so funny. So that's a good. So what is it like? Like when you go to Lincoln, Nebraska, the audiences don't exactly look. It sounds like where you grew up. Have you done the flip side? Like, do you go on the like to black rooms?
Black shows, yes, I do.
Do they exist in Philadelphia? And do you go to the South? And
yeah.
Tell me about that, because that's something I don't know a lot about. And honestly, like, I've been to a couple shows or been on stage in a couple shows where the majority of the audience didn't look like me.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure out. Basically, if I make fun of myself as a white person, I'll do great. But I would like to become more universal and practice in those areas. But basically, I'm asking you, where do I find where's there a black room I can get on stage? Where is that?
There's a lot of black rooms. There's a lot of black rooms. I don't know about Lincoln, Nebraska, but Lincoln, Nebraska has a lot of great spaces where we've performed, and I love all the comics and the producers there. We actually had the opportunity to headline some shows there as well. But, and also, Sioux Falls, South Dakota gets no credit. They are like really doing well and supporting local comics. And that was the first place I headlined, and I was so appreciative. But to answer your question, yes, there are black spaces where you can come perform. Come to Philly, we'll show you. New York has a lot, especially in Harlem. Boston has it. There, I know that Bats Lava is where people go, or Facebook. I know there's different Facebook pages. Now Philadelphia has a Facebook page, but there are spaces like that. But a lot of black spaces are kind of either they'll say they're black spaces or they're subtle because they're very inclusive. like for example, on Monday nights, there's a place called Comedy John, which is in Fishtown in Philadelphia. And it is a
Did you
black
say John? Comedy
John.
John.
Yes, you see me from Philly. You caught it.
Yeah.
Yes. You know your Philly lingo. Love it. John is like it's like and I just the person, place, or thing. You use it for anything. It's you know, I remember that bit that Bernie Mac did about motherfucker. He said that shit is an adjective, the person, place, or thing. So that's what John is, you know? And so Comedy John is, you know, traditionally is known as a black space, but it's not like a space that no one can enter. You can come and perform, but it's really a space for like Black folks to feel comfortable and to express themselves. So you as a white comedian, you are more than welcome to come there. And for me, that's why I like to travel a lot, because I never want to be known just as like a Black comic, or I know D.L. Hughley spoke about this recently about what does that mean. I don't want to be known as like a queer comic. I don't want to be known as just like a female comic. I want to be known as a comic for everyone. Right. And I want to make sure that my stories are relatable. Like I have stories about, I don't have kids, but I'm around kids about being an aunt, about relationship. I have a story about getting hit by a car and using as a loophole to not get parking tickets, like things that happen that can be the most zaniest thing. So it's interesting, when I go to white spaces, you would think that will be challenging, but a lot of white spaces are just happy to be there. They're like, wow, we don't, it's diversity here. This is diversity and she gonna do good. And people are appreciative. Sometimes people look at you weird, like who the hell let this person in? But I don't let that faze me. I trying to figure out, how do we break the fourth wall between us? How do I make sure that you see me as number one, as non-threatening? So before show starts, I will walk around and like greet people, like, hey, welcome to the show. Excited to have you. And after the show, I say thank you. So people can feel that. Even if they feel like they didn't like my joke, we can at least say like, oh, that person was a great person to see. Like, you don't have to like everyone's joke. You know, comedy is subjective. If you don't like my joke, you don't like Black people. I'm just saying, you don't. You know, Black History Month went by, Women's History Month, and Black rooms can be challenging for me sometimes, because there's different types of Black rooms. There's some type of comedy. You have like the ones that are people have a certain style. People have like, you know, if you go to like Brooklyn, or if you go to Harlem, perform, come to Philly, perform, and every space is different. So when people say Black rooms, there's so much diversity in Black rooms. Sure, and there's some rooms where I walk in and I bomb for mics, but I kill it for sure. But because people couldn't see a place that was relatable. And so I had to kind of shift myself a little bit to see like, who's in the crowd? What are other comics before me saying? The people like the people want like the easygoing comedy. The people want me to be political. Are these like, you know, DC elitist folks? Or are these like, you know, homies from the hood in North Philly? Like, who are these folks? Because you have to kind of like, I'm not saying be a chameleon all the time where you're not true to yourself, but also kind of see like who's in that space and what jokes can you pull. And sometimes, like you said, it's okay to make fun of yourself. I remember walking to a show and it was all just like white men. I have no relationship, but I said to them, I was like, wow, I guess we all got big dick energy here tonight, huh? So, you know, you have to. And I'm like, yep, guys, I got it too.
Sometimes you got to address the differences. And,
yes.
and, you know, the audience wants to be seen. They want to know that you're not just like performing for a Zoom camera, like you're present and in the room. And yeah.
Exactly. Okay, you said it so beautifully. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. So if you could go back and talk to yourself at one of your early open mics and give you some advice, what would you change? Like, what could you do differently, do you think, in the last few years?
I think be comfortable with where you're at and be confident about where you're at. I think sometimes we want to write the best jokes. We want to make people laugh at every second. We want to, you know, set up punchline joke. I think the best advice I'll give myself is trust the process. Continue working on your craft. Like, I like to take classes. Classes are great, but continue going to mic, continue going to shows, continue putting yourself out there, and you will find your community. You will find your space. You will find people who will seek you out. One thing I'm going to probably tell myself is be on social media more. Social media and I feel like we have a benevolent relationship. Like, you know how it is. Everybody wants you to be on social media. That's how folks find you. And so I finally created a website with a friend of mine's helped me. She's a brilliant artist, and she's a visual artist, and also does fashion. Her name is Geraldine. She's amazing. If you go to my website, akudoelejonu.com, you see her information. I had to kind of push myself. It's weird because comedy, it is external, but there's a business side of it you had to be more external about. You know, Mark, like I respect you so much because you create spaces, you create shows, and you have a platform and use a platform in such a beautiful way, whether it's your YouTube channel, or whether it's your website, or whether it's the festival. And so I had to learn that comedy does not end when I leave the stage and perform. Like I have to continue putting myself out there, putting my work out there in a way that's meaningful, but also being visible. Like 2 million people are not going to be at my show. Yeah. I need to be visible to these people, whether it's online, whether it's creating a website that's active and not just there, but kind of showing folks like, I know you guys can see any comments. I didn't realize how saturated, how many comedians there are. Comedians have this nightlife that blew me away. I'm like, there's people out here this late? It is midnight. It is past my bedtime. So I just didn't know it was a whole world. I didn't know. I'm like, it's like Narnia. I'm like, I didn't know the world existed. So having this world exists, I think I had to push myself because I'm the kind of person, I get up early at 5 a.m. I need to be in bed by 10. And I had to tell myself, like, no, Akudo, you need to stay up. You need to network. You need to go to shows, which I love. Shows, no problem. You got to go to mics. But even with mics, I had to learn, go to mics that really celebrate you and don't break you down. Because not all mics are the same. I'm not saying that these mics have to be at comedy clubs. Like one of my favorite mics that I went to, where was I? I was in Denver. I loved the comedy clubs in Denver. I got the chance to perform at one of the biggest clubs in Denver, downtown. I was able to do open mic, and that was great. But also went to another like bar. Well, like you know the riffraffs, the cool kids. You know, they're all just hanging out, and I just hung out with them and went up there, did on stage, and that was fun too. So it's okay. Put yourself out there, but also make sure that you see your comedy as a business and really continue growing. And I would love to hear from you, Mark. Like, how were you able to build this brand? Because I was impressed. Like, I knew about you when I met you. I was like, oh, he does exist.
I don't know. I mean, it's just a lot of hard work. I did a show last night, dragged everything to my car at 10 p.m. and drove 2 hours back home. I tell a lot of people, like, this is what I say. I say, you have to be willing to do the work other people aren't willing to do. And it's not that hard. It's not that like everybody. I mean, it would be awesome to run a 500-person show in Denver where I live, but that's not really realistic. And then there's value in consistency and repeatability. Like in Vail, which is the place I've run a show for the longest, it's been like 6 years. I have the biggest email database. I know the most people up there. When I go up, people are like, "Oh, I saw you 3 years ago." You know. Blah, blah, blah. Why are you still telling that same joke?
Because it works.
or you've gotten much better, you know, sometimes they say that, but, you know, and it's just, you know, you, and then you have to invest in talent. Like I used to work in restaurants. I remember this manager was always like, I got to put my aces in my places. So like every server wanted the section with the most tables because you could you'd sell the most food and you'd get the most tips. You'd have to make the most money, but everybody wanted that, but he'd put his best people in those sections. And so like
that's a good point.
It doesn't translate 1-to-1, but basically what I'm saying is pay for really good headliners, get really good comics. Don't just give spots like as favors. That's a terrible business model because people will come to a show. I stress so much. I run 75 plus shows a year and I want every show to be fantastic.
Yes.
And it's hard to make 100% of them fantastic. Every once in a while, there's one that's, you know, got peaks and valleys and it's stressful to go through that, but you can avoid it for the most part if you book really strong talent.
And you're curating. I don't think people realize you're a curator.
Yeah.
Like you're putting together
some effort in that. And you talked about networking, like that's been huge. Yeah. I mean, I just couldn't have done this 5 years ago, you know, because I didn't know enough people. And now like I have a network, etc. All right, I want to ask you. Sorry, I want to ask you one last question. That was very nice of you to ask me a question,
No
and then we're going to get out of here. You do a lot of road work. You're all over the place. You're not just in Philadelphia. Tell us a funny or like failure oriented, not your best story. What's something where you went out and I'll tell you, you can't tell the time you went to Lincoln, Nebraska and performed at the Zoo Bar for 4 people because we already discussed that earlier. So it's a different one. People like the failure stories.
Oh, the failure.
Yeah.
Oh, man, where do I start? Okay, I'm gonna. I will say, I think I guess it's a learning opportunity. Produce our first sketch comedy show, and we were excited. We were like, "Yo, we got the space, the venue, we got the actors. Everyone is moving and shaking." Listen, there was a couple of failures. The space wasn't conducive in terms of access. We had to walk a lot of steps to get up there, which tells a lot of people who didn't have certain physical abilities, folks who needed more ability to get up there, they couldn't come to the show, which wasn't great. And also, we thought that there was tech opportunity at the show, and it's hard to do a sketch comedy show if there's no real tech. And so that got botched. And so I feel like we were bebopping the whole time, like, trying to, the music that we had to play for cues, we couldn't do that. And so it looked a hot mess. It was supposed to be a variety show.
Where was this?
This was, I'm not going to say the theater, but it was in town. And the theater was great. The people were great, but I think we didn't do enough. We trusted the people who were producing, and we thought that we were walking to a thing that was fully available for us to do, but they didn't do enough research. I think it was the first time using that space. And they told us within a month about that. And we want to jump in the opportunity, like, what? A month? Yeah. Okay, we can do this. And so it became a learning opportunity because the important things you have to know, like, do they have good tech? Yeah. Do they have spaces that's handicap accessible? Is there parking in the area?
I think the big lesson there is anytime you do a show at a venue for the first time, you got to have your eyes and ears open for ways to improve. Because there's usually going to be, you're not going to hit it out of the park the very first time. I just did a show in the last week at a venue for the first time, and there were things that drove me crazy about it that we will fix if we do a show there again. But it's not always going to be perfect. Sometimes you roll in, you've sight unseen, and everything goes great. And but other times there are surprises and things you don't know about. But once you've run a show 10 times in the same venue, you can do it in your sleep. And
Exactly. We went back and did another show, and it went by perfectly. Plays and Play is a great venue, great people. I love them. I think it was just us, and also we put too much trust in the people who were putting together, where we should have done our own homework walking into it. Yeah.
If you want it done right, have Akudo do it.
Call Mark.
Yeah. All right, Akudo, we got to get out of here. How do people find you?
Oh, they can find me on IG. They can find me on Facebook. I also have a website, akudoelejonu.com. You can find me in the streets hanging out. Just say hello. My email is there. My email is akudo.elejonu@gmail.com. And also my phone number is there. So find me in any way and all that stuff. But it was so nice seeing you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Stick around for a second. And you can all see me at Comedy John in Philadelphia in, 6 months or something. We'll figure that out. I'll get out to Philadelphia. We'll hit some mics and do some shows. Akudo, you're great. Thank you for doing it.
No
everybody
problem.
will see you next Monday.
Take care, everyone.